President Trump and the First Lady test positive for COVID. They will both beat this virus. Audio leaks of the FLOTUS calls, more white supremacy talk from the media, and the ACB hearings are full speed ahead. Welcome, my friends, to the Buck Sexton Show. Big news today that everybody's talking about is about the President of the United States testing positive for COVID-19, as has the First Lady. As I come to you on air now, the Chief of Staff has tested negative. Vice President Pence has tested negative. The Vice President's wife has tested negative, and Joe Biden is also negative. So everyone's now focused on this today. It's created a bit of a frenzy. Let's all take a deep breath. Let's take a step back from all the insanity and be very clear about what we know right now and what this means as of now. The president has a virus that has infected millions, perhaps at this point, tens of millions of Americans. His chances of a full recovery, including a full recovery after pretty minimal symptoms, are very high. He does have some cold-like symptoms at this point, so he is not asymptomatic. Now, this is a time when you do want to pray for the president and the first lady. This is not a terminal cancer diagnosis. This is not something that we can't treat or we don't know what to do. There's an overwhelming likelihood, based on just the statistics, the numbers, the president is going to be just fine. First lady, just fine. I mean, she's actually in considerably better statistical condition, although the president should be just fine as well. Now, there's a lot of speculation that comes out of this right away. The New York Times, Washington Post, already putting up things about, well, can the president even really still stay on the ballot, or can the president be expected to continue on in this campaign in any meaningful way? Look, he's supposed to quarantine now for 2 weeks. We'll see how he does. It's, as I've said, I'm very confident that the president's going to beat this thing, and we're going to hear in about a week's time that he's feeling pretty good and he's going to finish out his quarantine and get right back to it. That is my expectation. Now, nothing is perfect. Nothing is certain. We know that too. But thoughts and prayers go up to the president, the first lady, everybody affected in the president's family and the White House, and for the whole country. I don't care who you are. I don't care what we're talking about. If you are an American and the president of the United States has a disease that can be fatal, although it is very unlikely to be so, you are praying for the speediest possible recovery. It's what's best for the country. It's also what's the most fundamental decency we have as human beings. I can assure you right now that if, heaven forbid, Joe Biden came down with the coronavirus, the only thing you would hear from me on this show about that, about the condition and the diagnosis, is I hope Joe Biden beats this thing as fast as possible with the bare minimum of symptoms and discomfort, and God bless him and his family. That's the only way. There's no other way. Right? There's no other way. You can't consider yourself to be a moral person and not root for your fellow American, your fellow human being, to beat this disease. I'm not worried for the president. I'm just hopeful he'll beat it quickly and get back out on the campaign trail. I mean, I could say I'm concerned. We're all a little concerned. I'm not worried. One thing we do know about this president, he's a fighter. And we know that this is a fight that he absolutely is going to win. Now, I've also, if you recall, months ago, I said, it's likely that one of the candidates, we got a lot of senior citizen politicians out there, and it's likely that one of them is going to get COVID. You have to go back in the files. But I remember talking to this on the show. We're probably going to have somebody who is COVID positive, who's either the president or one of the Democrat candidates. This is, earlier on, one of the Democrats at the top of their list coming forward with this. That was what I thought was going to happen, and it's what you would expect under the circumstances. Now, now that we've dealt with the basic truth of this, which is that the president has COVID, I think he's going to be fine. I'm not worried about him, and I'm praying for him and his family. And now let's talk about, because we have to, this is a political show. What are the responses to this? What do people say in positions of power, of prominence, when they hear that the president of the United States has what can in fact be a fatal disease? Now, as I've said, very unlikely. It's 0.0 something or other in fatality overall. But today is unfortunately one of those days where you can make a very strong case that live blue check journos are in fact the worst professional class in America. I don't even think it's worth it to go through and cite all the individuals who are, and I'm talking about not just strangers. Obviously, there are unhinged left-wing Democrats. There are crazy people who are Democrats all across the country who are openly rooting for the demise, the physical demise, the passing of the president of the United States. There are people out there who are saying it publicly. We see it, including blue checks, including people who make a living doing commentary. Now, you would think, you'd like to think at least, that this would be shouted down by other blue checks, that this would be considered so far beyond the pale, so unacceptable. But generally speaking, they move past it. They just ignore it. Almost like Antifa and the BLM riots. If they're not defending it, they're pretending it's not there. The people who are wishing for the death of the president of the United States on social media are a moral monstrosity. And I can tell you this, if you were a blue check conservative, if you were somebody in the media who works at one of the few conservative media platforms, or you're a talk radio host like me, and the roles were reversed and Joe Biden got sick with COVID-19, and anybody who said, that they were happy about that, or, God forbid, they were hoping that had a tragic end, they would be held to account by their peers. I would not allow it to go unconfronted if somebody on our side was doing that. It's happening all over the place with the libs. It's disgusting. And it's also entirely predictable. It's not even a little bit surprising. Although I have seen a couple of people on the right in media who are taking screen grabs of, because they know that it's usually the emotional outburst from the libs that shows you what they really think. And then sometimes they're trying to clean it up afterwards. So they're screenshotting all these tweets they're putting out after the president has come down with COVID-19 to make sure that we know what they really think. We know what their real beliefs are around the health and safety of the leader of the free world. Now trying to score political points as well. So there's the unhinged leftist mob that is rooting for the president to fail in his fight against this disease, which is absolutely disgusting. But, the same kind of moral monsters who cheered on the smearing and the psychological torture of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh but a couple of years ago, it's not a surprise that they're that much, that they're that deranged, that they're a bunch of savages, a bunch of true barbarian morons who now are openly rooting for COVID-19 to beat the president in this fight. But we do need to establish that is there. And I'm telling you, and they would argue this, and I don't care, it's more prominent on the left than it would ever be on the right, because they have convinced themselves it is mainstream. It is the dominant thinking on the left is that the president is an evil man who is a threat to this country as long as he is president, and that he needs to be punished up to and including what they're saying on social media now about COVID. On the right, we would say that that's disgusting. We would never want that to be a claim made or a desire in the name of our beliefs, in the name of our politics, if Joe Biden were sick. And I can tell you this, and I know you feel the same way. Not one day, not 1 second have I thought to myself, it would be really great for us if Joe Biden got COVID-19. Wouldn't that? It's an atrocious thought. And it's a real moment of moral testing here. There's a real gut check that comes into this. Because I don't believe that both political parties are morally equivalent. I don't think either is perfect, but I do not believe that the right, that conservatism in America, that people who share the beliefs and fundamental principles that I do, I don't think that the left is as worthy on those points. I don't think that the left holds itself to account. I think that they are much more willing to embrace psychotic viciousness in the name of politics. Truly vindictive, unhinged mob mentality. You know, this is straight from the darkest moments of the French Revolution, right? Grab that person that never did anything to me and rip them apart with the angry mob screaming and shrieking and covered in blood. I mean, that's how crazy the left has become. And you see this now. You see the way they respond to the president's diagnosis. You see the way they cheer on mobs attacking police officers in the streets or burning down buildings. They have developed, the Democrats, let's use the word, the left, the Democrats, one and the same, a psychological sickness here over politics. And the way they respond to the president, the first lady coming down with this diagnosis is yet more proof of that. And that's what's really troubling to me. I have full confidence in our president. He's a fighter. He's going to make it through this. And he is in very robust health, thank God. He has been for a very long time. And the first lady is considerably younger than the president, and so she'll probably, again, thoughts and prayers, and we don't know, but the likelihood is in this situation that she'll end up with, a sniffle and a sore throat for a week. Let's hope, or less. But then there are people that are making this deeply political about masks, and they're going to drill down into this as though this proves some thesis here, because the president hasn't been the most vocal about masking always and all the time. If you really believe, and when I say you know what I mean, if a person believes that wearing a raggedy, multiple use, dirty, covered in bacteria, cloth mask, sometimes, not when you're eating in the restaurant, but when you walk into the restaurant, not in your home where you're around people, unfortunately, that you're most likely to get COVID from as family members. That's true. Intrafamilial transmission is really the biggest risk. It was, they thought, nosocomial transmission of the virus in the hospital, but it's really intrafamilial where a lot of people are getting this. And if you really think that little cloth on your mouth is a better precaution than what has been around the president, what the president has subjected everybody who meets with him to. They're doing daily testing for people in the White House. I got tested, and they would not let me get into the actual West Wing. They would not let me actually sit down with the president until I had a negative test. Okay? But he has been masking more and more in the last couple of months, right? The president finally said, okay, we'll make this concession. He has been masking up a lot more, and now he gets the virus. And now they're going to say, oh, but it's because he didn't do it. He didn't do what the science said. You're already hearing this. Nancy Pelosi taking a cheap shot. Maybe now he knows that you need to wear masks. As if we haven't had tens of thousands of people who were living in terror, constantly wearing masks, who still got sick. But this is being right away politicized about who believes in the science. Trump is sick. Biden isn't. That's because Biden is wearing a mask all the time. No, it's because Biden is hiding in a basement. I mean, look, I agree. If you don't go outside, if you don't live your life, if you don't actually campaign for president in any normal way, you're at less risk for the disease. But if you're going to live your life and go out there, how much does having this porous cloth that is not sealed around your nose or your mouth on sometimes protect you? Maybe a little bit. But that's not the takeaway. They want the takeaway to be, oh, there's some poetic justice in the president catching COVID. And I'm not even talking about the psychopaths that want the president to become really ill, hospitalized. And I'm just talking about people in general. They're saying, see, he got it because he didn't listen to the science. Really, morons? Because Boris Johnson got it. Other premiers of foreign countries have gotten it, including countries where they were all about masking all the time. No, the president had to keep being the president. And here's a narrative that may emerge out of this. Here's one that I see coming. We may, in fact, have a president who has been fighting with us through this virus for 7 months, leading this country, not panicking people, being reasonable, working with states, making sure that the PPE was out there, making sure the virus vaccine was coming as quickly as possible. He may end up getting it himself because he was still out there, still being president, not hiding in a basement. And he'll beat this in a couple of weeks' time and then have a few weeks to go out and show the American people that his story is our story. We're all going to beat this thing. We're not going to succumb to fear and hysteria. We, as a country, as a people, will beat this virus just like the President of the United States and the First Lady will. What does the COVID-19 pandemic have to do with you losing your home? Well, you see, the FBI says cybercrime's up about 75% since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, and home title theft is a cybercrime. Here's how it works. The bad guys, they find your information online, then they use a quitclaim deed to kick you off your home's title, put them on your home's title, take out loans against your equity, and then leave you with the payments. You might not even find out about this until you get the foreclosure notice on your home in the mail. The usual identity theft services do not protect you, which is why you need Home Title Lock. Go to HomeTitleLock.com. It'll create a virtual barrier around your home's title. Use the promo code RADIO, and you'll get 30 free days of protection. You can also check at the site to see if you're a victim of this crime and don't even know it. HomeTitleLock.com, promo code RADIO for 30 free days of protection, and you can check to see if you're a victim of home title theft without even knowing it yet. Take action today.
Well, of course, as with everyone, we all receive that news with great sadness. I always pray for the president and his family that they're safe. I continue to do so more intensified. We must have spatial distancing. We must be wearing our masks. We must have sanitation because it can help crush the virus and stop the spread. So maybe now that people who see the president of the United States with all the protection that he has and the First Lady still having this exposure, it might be, as you say, a learning experience. But more than learning, it has to be something that is acted upon. This is tragic. It's very sad. But it also is something that going into crowds, unmasked and all the rest, was sort of a brazen invitation for something like this to happen. Sad that it did, but nonetheless hopeful that it will be a transition to a saner approach to what this virus is all about.
Yeah, she's praying for him, but she's, also telling you the president was asking for it. That's her opinion. I wonder, was Boris Johnson asking for it too, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom? I just want to know. Was he reckless? Was he against the science? He got it. You look at the list of people around the world. Was Tom Hanks reckless and against the science? He got it. I mean, you just look at all these different people that have gotten coronavirus. It's an airborne disease that's very contagious. Nancy Pelosi's whole premise here that we can stop the virus, we can stop the trend. That's a lie. There is no evidence that is actually possible unless you lock down the entire country continuously, which is insane. So they don't seem to understand. You either live life and there is risk from that living of life, or you just keep not living life and you're safe from the virus until you start living your life again. This is the reality. Yeah, sure. If it was just as simple as wear masks, we'd all be done with this. We wouldn't have cases anymore because people have been wearing masks in places for months. But Pelosi doesn't care.
We don't even know what's going on because all the lies. But here's the thing that's so irresponsible. He's going to Minnesota knowing that Hope had it. He's going to New Jersey knowing that Hope had it. The White House press secretary unmasked is giving a press conference. Nobody in the Congress is being notified. And so this is just rank irresponsibility and it's rank incompetence. And let's just stipulate, he's lied about the science for 6 months, couldn't protect himself or his family. So how is he going to protect the American people going forward? And so I feel bad that he's sick. I want him to get better. Certainly, it's a tragic situation, but we have to not let up on the gas if you want to remove him.
I mean, the mooch is a tremendous scumbag. I wanted you to hear that so you could know what a scummy fellow this is. And the president made him chief of his transition. The president has bad instincts about people that he puts in charge. That's established. Even the most ardent Trumpers have to go, okay, you want to play this game? The mooch, Cohen, Omarosa, you get on the list. These are people he gave real authority and power to. So the president has had some very bad decision-making around that. Look, no one's perfect. I get it. I'm not trying to bash or dive into that right now. But, I mean, the mooch, this guy here, he's just parroting what the Democrats want to hear, right? This is, if you want to be on MSNBC, this is what you have to say. The president's lied about the science. Okay, like how? Notice how when, let's say, Fauci's out there saying, okay, don't wear a mask, especially outside, it's dumb. Wearing a mask if you're healthy doesn't make any sense. You don't need to do that. Oh, he wasn't lying. He just was wrong. If the president said something at any point during COVID, it's going to go away. Don't worry about it. We're going to be all right. He's lying. So the experts can get away with being factually wrong at any point in this. The experts, and I will not let this go, at least the ones that we see on TV who are doctors and public health and epidemiologists, they would justify the BLM protests. Remember, BLM protests happen, huge spike in cases all summer, all across the country, but we're supposed to believe that didn't spread the virus. Right? The big biker rally up in the Dakotas, that spread the virus, they said, ended up not even being true. But the BLM riots where people were showing up in close quarters, screaming for hours and hours, right? When I say outdoor transmission isn't a risk, I'm obviously not saying you can go up to someone and spit in their face and you're outdoors so you can't get the virus. I'm just saying in the normal course of walking past people, if you keep 6 feet from somebody outside, the scientific evidence is there's basically zero chance, right? There's like less than a lightning strike chance you're actually going to contract COVID-19 from walking past someone outside who doesn't have a mask on, and if you don't have a mask on. But if you're all packed together screaming, whose streets are streets, then you might put yourself at some risk. But I just really hate this dude, Scaramucci. Couldn't protect himself or his family. What a scummy guy this fellow is, really. Anything to just be whatever benefits him the most. So the mooch is scummy. Don Lemon is just dumb. Here's Don Lemon, play 10.
Carl, in large part, it's his own dereliction is partly to blame for this. He chose to go out to rallies. He chose to downplay masks. He chose to not social distance and call it a hoax and so on and so forth. But, again, it's horrible that the president has this, but he chose to handle this situation this way. People in the West Wing and the administration saying it's frowned upon to wear masks.
We saw the tape of Nancy Pelosi getting her haircut, walking around a salon, people working in there, no mask on. A salon that was shut down because people can't get their haircut because, even with a mask on, it's so dangerous. We saw the video of Dianne Feinstein walking through the airport, no mask on, in a private airport, of course, because she's super rich and important, but no mask on. The pilots have masks on. They have to, but Dianne Feinstein, the rules are for the little people. Look, this is really getting into some core psychological and I really think brain wiring differences between the left and the right. I want to be, and I think the conservative mentality is, I think people that share my worldview, my view of life, I want to be as much in charge of my own decisions, my own life, as humanly possible. And I do not trust people that there's no accountability for and don't give a crap about me to make decisions about my health and my life. Okay, that's the other people think, oh, if the crowd says that this is what should be done, even if they're changing their mind every month, even if they're hypocritical because they don't actually do the things they tell other people to do, I'm going to do that because there's security in consensus. But it's actually a false security because there isn't a real consensus. but the president partly to blame. No, the president made a decision, an affirmative decision to go out and campaign and be the gosh darn president of the United States. I want to say something else, but, family show. Be the president of the United States, even during a pandemic, to campaign, to take his message to the people. And I think that this is an example of how we all should be able to make choices in our lives. Okay? You don't want to wear a mask. You don't want to be around anybody. Stay home. Stay home until the vaccine has been tested for 18 months. We'll make sure you get all the food you need. We'll take care of those people. But to have everybody basically stay home, what are we doing? They agreed in the risk analysis in the early days that lockdowns and these restrictions until the vaccine were catastrophic, destructive, and wrong. But this has become polarized. It's become political now. We got an election coming up, so they're not going to relent on this at all. They pretend like we didn't have these discussions. They pretend that no one really knows what was said before and can't compare it to what is being said now. But I'm just here to remind everybody that the experts have been wrong time and time again, that they wanted us to create at one point 1 million ventilators. And since then, we found out that ventilators are not a good treatment for this, an absolute last resort. And with the way they were putting people on ventilators in the beginning, there was about a 50% chance that person would die after being put on the ventilator. Right? They didn't know very much. They didn't understand very much. And they were telling us just panic, lockdown, don't go outside. We have no idea how much real damage has been done to the economy yet because we haven't been able to normalize. What stores are really going to open? What business models are really going to work? How many missed cancer diagnoses are there? How many, they're not really tabulating the overdose numbers and everything at a national level. I'd be very curious to see. How many people have become so depressed that they're suicidal because they're separated from people? There's this terrible story of a woman, senior citizen, she's in her 90s in Florida, and she just stopped eating because she couldn't handle the isolation anymore. Isolation imposed on her. She's a healthy woman. She was a healthy woman. But, oh my gosh, you might get COVID, so no one's allowed to see you. Story out of Florida just in the last week. Stopped eating, died. That's where we are. We have seniors who are going on effectively self-imposed hunger strike because they're being abandoned by society because, God forbid, we make we got to take some precautions, but you're going to not let anyone see their loved ones? You're going to have people locked down in nursing homes that can't have any contact with the outside world? We can't do testing and basic precautions for seniors? No, it's so much easier to say, wear a mask, shut up, stay inside, lockdown. These people are desperate for control that doesn't exist. The virus is going to keep spreading. The virus is going to be all over the place. We have a vaccine coming. Hopefully it works really well. There is a possibility that we're going to have to deal with this even after the vaccine, that there may be mutations, and this now becomes like the flu, a seasonal affliction that we have to deal with. What's really the answer? Are you going to wear a mask forever? Are you going to work out with a mask on forever? Are you going to go for all your jogs with a mask on the rest of your life? For a disease that kills substantially less than 1% of the people who get it. And now as they're getting better at the treatments on it too, that number keeps going down. I mean, really the fatality rate that we've been talking about, 0.03, is the one that you most often, I think, see, 0.03, 0.04. That's for all age categories. You get under 50, it's like 0.0001. And that number is also going to keep going down because the therapeutics are getting better and because the vaccines will be a useful tool in helping to control this. But see, control is really the word we have to focus on here because the left wants to control you. They want to tell you what to do. And there are a lot of people who honestly go about their day-to-day lives with a tremendous amount of anxiety and a bit of cowardice and really think that the government is going to be able to protect them from all the bad things. If only the big, mean people like me and you who believe in individual freedom and choice and liberty stopped wanting those things, the government would make them safe and warm at night. The government would provide for them and everything would be better. This is the fantasy that leads to tyranny, and unfortunately, it's a fantasy that about half of this country has fallen in love with. It's not real. We're going to continue to get dragged through this. If Joe Biden gets elected, it's only going to get worse. National mask mandate, think about that. It'll be enforced in a way that's clearly selective. It'll be used as a cudgel against, remember, The red states, oh, they don't believe in masks. They're so bad. The red states have, especially the large, heavily populated ones, had far better outcomes in this fight against COVID than the blue states have. But that's always lost in the conversation somehow. The worst places in the country are in the northeast of the United States, the bluest of the blue states. Somehow we're not supposed to pay any attention to that. Weren't we all wearing masks here in New York? Yes, we were. People want to spit on you, which obviously could actually transmit the virus. If you go outside, a beautiful sunny day, don't have a mask on. And we had the worst outcomes here. We weren't anti-mask truthers in New York City. I can tell you that. In the beginning of the pandemic, and I'm not ashamed to say it, I never left the house without a mask. I was wearing rubber gloves, but that was after having been on the subway 4 times a day during the maximum spread when no one even knew what the heck this thing was. We've forgotten everything, though. It's just panic and politics and the infliction of emotional distress on the population so that they don't push back and they don't have any willingness to say enough is enough. That's really the Democrat vision for your future. And they're trying to leverage the fact that the president of the United States, like many other presidents and prime ministers around the world, has COVID-19 to further ram all of this down your throat. It's really upon all of us to decide whether or not we're going to accept that. I say no.
You are second in line for the presidency. Has the White House contacted you about the continuity of government?
No, they haven't, but that is an ongoing, not with the White House, but with the military, quite frankly, in terms of some officials in the government. But let us just all pray for the president's health. Thank God the vice president has tested negatively, and the second lady as well. So again, that continuity of government is always in place.
A lot here, actually. It's somewhat subtle, but there's MSNBC asking Nancy Pelosi, has anyone talked to you about how, you might have to become the president? No, because the president is going to be fine. He's not going to be holding in-person meetings, but he's just going to be not dealing with other people directly. He has devices. He has Skype. Or not Skype, but video conferencing. They have secure stuff. He has phones. This is not the president hasn't had a stroke where he's unable to be responsive. But the libs are already jumping to, oh my gosh, maybe Nancy Pelosi will have to take over for a while at least as president. Mike Pence is fine, and Nancy Pelosi is almost 80. So believe it or not, even though she goes around with a mask for the cameras, she is also at risk from COVID. There really seems to be a mentality that comes out today from the media where, well, we know none of the Democrats are going to get it. New York City full of Democrats, and a lot of us here, my fellow New Yorkers, died from COVID. Wearing masks all the time. Still died from COVID. Still got it. Still had bad health outcomes from it. I mean, you can tell they really think, the Democrat, Nancy Pelosi's, she's invulnerable because, she's one of the good, smart, science-y people. So she's at no real risk from getting COVID. But, Pence, Now, look, I know Pence has been in closer contact with the president. So people would say he's been around people who are COVID positive. But I can assure you, Nancy Pelosi's also been around people who are asymptomatic and COVID positive and hasn't known it. Everybody has. It's just a statistical certainty. And then you get into, are you really so protected? Really so protected from aerosols? You know that you can get it in your eyes, right? You can get it in your nose, too. I keep seeing people all the time now where their mouth is covered, but their nose isn't. It's like, well, there's actually a belief that your nose there may be more of the COVID virus in someone's nasal cavity than even in their throat at some stages of this. But, make sure that you're breathing through your nose out there without the mask. This is what we're seeing all over the place. Could you imagine Nancy Pelosi even as acting president of the United States? It's a terrifying thought, but the libs find that would be delightful to them. Pelosi, really one of the very worst examples of the contemporary Democrat mindset, a true limousine liberal, a true phony, and really no moral compass whatsoever. I do think it's interesting that you have these Democrat politicians who all feel the need to tell us how much they are praying for the president. That's what they have to say. They've also called him a traitor and wanted to throw him in prison, so I haven't forgotten that. But at least they're smart enough in the short term to say what they know they need to say about this. Otherwise, any person of good sense, irrespective of their politics, would say, well, these Democrats are completely insane. These Democrats have completely lost their minds. Now, what does this mean going forward for the debates, for the campaign trail? That is an area of focus I think is very interesting. The likelihood here is that there'll be people doing analysis for years to come. However the election ends up happening, and Trump's going to be on the ballot, and this stuff they're saying about, oh, maybe he shouldn't even stay in there. I mean, this is wishful thinking from the libs. Dream on, libs. The president's going to be fine, and he's going to be there on election day, and God willing, he's going to win. But there'll be a lot of historical analysis of this after the fact, where people say, I can tell you this much. If Trump beats Joe Biden in the election, there will be a Democrat narrative, get ready for it, that the president garnered sympathy during this period that propelled him to win. Right now, they're saying, oh, see, this is going to be terrible for Trump. Not talking about his health now, but politically going to be terrible for Trump because it shows how reckless he was. But if he beats Joe Biden, they're going to say, oh, but what really happened is everybody felt sorry for Trump, so they voted for him. Just watch.